Hello, world. This is episode number 30. I just had a take and we just cut that one out. So we're starting this over. Hello, world. This is episode 30. This is another discussion about pre-tax versus post-tax investing. This question is coming from Abby. Abby says, I am a super saver and please talk to me about pre-tax versus post-tax investments, as well as Roth conversions. I'm also going to include discussion regarding required minimum distributions and cash balance pensions. All right, so I have Be Live going again. This is completely different from the last time I used this before. So I'm just getting this all figured out, but I think this is working. I have my video on and I have my audio working, and I am going to share my screen. So this is going to be a little bit more of a technical discussion because we really have to go through the numbers. So we often are faced with the option of investing in pre-tax investments like a traditional IRA or a traditional 401k. Or post-tax investments like a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k. And I have a whole other episode from a couple years ago discussing this. Please refer to that for reference. But I am going to discuss in particular on this first example, investing in a pre-tax 401k from your job, as well as a cash balance pension. Okay, cash balance defined benefit plan, also called a cash balance pension or cash balance plan, a CBP. Okay, and I go to Kravitz, KRAVITZ.com, and they have a list of amounts based on age. These are estimates, but we can use those numbers, which is what I used for this model. Okay, so I have two columns. On the left column, we have the yellow side, which is investing everything pre-tax. You're putting in the full amount into your 401k as an employee. That's $19,500. And then if you're 50, that's an extra $6,500. So it's a $26,000 contribution into the 401k. Then there's the additional component you put into the cash balance pension, and I just combine them into one column. So at the beginning, it's $96,500 at age 35. This increases the amount you can put in. By age 51, it's $196,000. Then you get to 61, it's $306,000. And you keep on going all the way up to $369,000 at age 70. Okay, so that is the first column on the left, just the contributions. Okay, then the third column, which is the first green one, this is the contribution that you would be putting into an after-tax taxable brokerage. Okay, this is not a Roth. There's no such thing as like a Roth cash balance pension. So I'm just going to make it simple and use a regular taxable account. Okay, because a lot of people say, why am I going to bother putting money into a cash balance pension if I have to restrict it to a certain type of investment allocation, and I don't know if I really want to put more money in pre-tax? There's a lot of arguments. Okay, so first of all, your asset allocation is a global allocation across all of your investments. So it does not matter what allocation you have in a particular fund. Okay, so throw that argument out of the way that the return is quote unquote too low. Okay, this is just where you're going to have a good portion of your bonds. Okay, but if you choose to opt out of the cash balance pension and the 401k, all of that money that you would have invested, so at age 35, it would have been $96,500 pre-tax. I'm going to make the assumption that you're at the top tax bracket, that jointly you're making more than like $625,000. And so all of that extra money, so you're making like $725,000 plus. So you have about $100K that can all go in pre-tax. Okay. If you choose not to put it into the 401k and cash balance pension, then you have to pay the tax on it. So you have to pay 37% federal tax. And you also are going to take that money as payroll and you're going to have to pay payroll tax on it, which is Medicare of 2.35%. This is one of the biggest advantages of a cash balance pension is you get to avoid Medicare. Okay. And that tax never has to get paid. It's a permanent 2.35% savings. Okay. So instead of getting $96,500 invested, you are investing $58,527. Okay. So you are starting way behind because you don't get to have all of that tax savings of about 40%. Okay. So we continue those contributions from $58,000 at age 35, and we continue all the way until age 70, and it's $223,000. Okay, so I have the column 2 and column 4 shows the total value of each of those two investments. So if we go the pre-tax route, and we invest it in the cash balance pension and 401k, and I'm going to assume a return of 5% every single year, okay? At the age of 70, after that last contribution at the end of the year, is worth about $17 million. Okay, this is a lot of money, okay? Now, if you did the after-tax route, I had to use a slightly different rate of return. I used 4.5% because there's something we call tax drag in the taxable account. You will have to pay taxes on the dividends or on the interest if there's bonds in there that get spit out every single year. Okay, and there's also capital gains tax, which if it's sitting in here, you haven't paid yet. Okay, but you do have to pay the tax on the dividends and interest during the holding period. And so I estimated that to be 0.5% less total return per year. This is going to vary based on what the investments are, how tax efficient your investments are, how well you can tax loss harvest, different things. And that's more for the capital gains issue. But I had to make an estimate, so I used an estimate of 4.5%. At the end of the year at age 70, you have $9.4 million versus $17 million. Okay, so obviously $17 million is way, 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 way more than the $9.5 million. It's still a ton of money, right? Now, remember, when you're investing pre-tax, you are investing assets that really are a liability to the government. You're investing basically on behalf of the government. So, there is still money that's not really yours. Okay, you're 70 years old. You have 17 million pre-tax. If you had that 17 million, it actually was a total of 7.8 million you had invested in pre-tax, or 4.7 if you had invested it after tax. Okay, so now to level the playing field and to do this very simply, let's say at age 70, at the end of the year, you decide to take all of that money and just withdraw all of it, okay, from your pre-tax and put it into taxable, or put it into a Roth IRA and do a Roth conversion. You would have to pay tax on the entire amount as a lump sum. Now, the current tax brackets max out at 37%. You have to go through all of the different brackets on the way up. So the first $625,000 would be taxed between 0, 10, 12, 22, 24, 32, 35% before you get to that 37% bracket. Okay. But then everything after that is all taxed at 37%. So most of it is taxed at 37%. The effective tax rate ends up being 36.6%, almost exactly 37%. So that $17 million, you take that tax off, which is $6.2 million. It leaves you with $10.76 million. Okay, $10.8 million. So that is the total amount you have if you did a lump sum conversion and put it into a Roth IRA at the age of 70 or 71. Okay. Now, on the other half, you had the $9.4 million, but you actually have about $4,700,000 in capital gains. Okay, so if you were to, let's just say, liquidate all of it, turn it into cash, or harvest the gains, you'd have to pay tax on all those capital gains, and that would cost you $1,062,000. Okay, so you would be left with $8.4 million. So you'd have 10.8 versus 8.4, which is a win for the pre-tax investing of 28.5%. And that's just taking a lump sum and cashing it out, or Roth converting it. Okay. Now, one would say, well, you don't have to harvest all your gains on the after tax side. You could just keep all those gains locked in and just harvest them as you need to. That is correct. And if you don't ever need to touch it, in current law, you could pass it all forward in your estate and not pay any tax. That it would have what we call step up in basis. But even in that situation, it would still be 9.4 million versus 10.8 million. Okay, so you still have a benefit doing pre-tax, and at the end, all that money sitting in a Roth IRA, which can be passed on as a Roth IRA. Okay, so that is the simple example. Invest pre-tax, everything you can, 401k and cash balance, versus ignoring all of it, but investing an equivalent amount of it. You come out ahead at any time point from the very beginning, even up if you work until the age of 70, you still come out ahead. Okay. So we are then going to look at the second example. Now, the second example is a little bit more complicated, okay, because now we're going to take somebody who invests only until the age of 50, okay, and then retires early because they've been banking all of this cash for 15 years or 16 years, from age 35 to 50. So it's the same person, but they stop earlier. At the age of 50, they have $3 million invested in their cash balance and 401k. On the after-tax side, they have $1.8 million. I'm kind of cutting this off with my picture here. Okay. And see that? Okay. So $1.8 million. So obviously you have a lot more money if you go the pre-tax route, 3 million versus 1.8. Now, as I showed before, you could just take the lump sum and cash out the whole thing, do a Roth conversion of all of that money, put it all into a Roth IRA. You're going to pay a lot of tax on it. You're going to pay about $300,000 on the first million, and then $740,000 on the next 2 million. So you're going to pay about $1,040,000, and you're still going to end up with about $2 million if you do the pre-tax route and Roth convert as a lump sum, and you're still going to win out over the after tax, which is going to be at 1.8 million. So you're going to be more than 10% ahead. But because you're age 50 and you have time ahead of you before required minimum distributions, before Social Security, you can take this out little by little out of the pre-tax side and do what's called a Roth conversion. Okay, so at age 50, in this example, I took the full $3 million and I roll it over to the traditional IRA, so we can say bye-bye to our work retirement accounts. We don't need the 401k. We don't need the cash balance. It's all rolled into a traditional IRA. You put that 3 million in there, and then you do a Roth conversion of a certain amount. Okay, we do a Roth conversion of $340,000. Okay, because if we do $340,000, that will get us to the top of the 24% bracket. Okay, it's actually 346,000. So we take out $346,000 because we don't want to take out money that'll be taxed up in the 30% range. We just want to take out money taxed between 0 and 24%. Okay, so what money was saved initially at 37% is now getting pulled out anywhere from 0 to 24%. Okay, so it ends up being an effective tax rate closer to like 20%, for example. Okay, I actually have the graph here, and if you pull out money right up to the end of the 24% bracket, your effective tax rate is going to be at 19%. Okay, So you do this process of taking out the $346,000. You do have to pay tax on it, which is $65,000 per year. Okay. And you pay that out of the Roth IRA. You do this every year from age 51 to 61. At the end, by the age of 62, you no longer have any money left in the traditional pre-tax IRA. All of the money has now been converted into the Roth IRA at an average of 19%. Okay, so now at the age of 61, or let's say 62 here, you have $4.4 million in a Roth IRA versus in the after-tax method, you have $3 million in the after-tax taxable account. And you still have gains there that you have to pay taxes on. Okay. The Roth IRA has no long-term capital gains. All right. So excellent. So in this situation, it's even better. 4.3 versus 2.9 is a huge difference. Okay. But wait, there's more. Okay. After you get to age 62, you have now cleaned out your entire pre-tax IRA. It's all Roth IRA money. Okay. And it will continue to grow all post-tax. And we're going to continue to age 70, just like we did in the previous example. And it ends up at $6.5 million. Okay. And there are no RMDs on Roth IRAs. So you never have to take this money out. So you end up with $6.5 million. On the after-tax side, you end up with $4.3 million. Okay. Now, again, you have here about $3 million in capital gains. If you were to pay capital gains tax on all of that money all at once, that would be about $650,000, which would leave you $4.3 million on the after-tax side versus $6.5 million in the Roth IRA. So that's a 52.6% benefit to doing the Roth IRA, Roth conversion route instead, and with all of the pre-tax while you're in your peak earnings years. Okay. Again, you don't have to harvest all of those gains. You could leave all those capital gains locked up in your taxable account and pass it on forward with a step up in basis to your heirs and not pay that tax. But you're still at a substantial deficit. The difference is going to be $4.9 million versus $6.5 million. Okay, you're still $1.6 million ahead. You're about like a 33% benefit or so. Okay. Now, I have our last example. Okay, and this one is a little bit more complicated. Okay, but instead of starting at 35 and ending at 50, we're going to continue all the way to age 72. Okay. And because this person is just banking all this money and this refuses to stop working. All right. And so you're going all the way until age 72. And so there's not going to be really a time for Roth conversions. By the time you get to age 72, you have to take RMDs, required minimum distributions. And these start out at about 4%, but then they increase. Okay. I have a column here called the RMD divisor, which I will just hide. That's not that important. Just to make it a little bit easier to view all of these things all in one spot. Okay. So we are going to start again at the beginning, and the person's 35 years old and investing the full amount pre-tax, $96,500, and we go all the way to age 50, just like we did before. They end up at $3 million. Okay, the people who invested after tax end up at $1.8 million. Okay, so that is the same. Okay, I'm sorry, I clicked a tab by accident. Okay, so at the age 50, that's all the same. Then we're going to continue now all the way up to age 7. Let's go to age 70. And now we have 17 million versus $9.4 million. Okay, these are huge numbers. Okay, but if you are really socking away that much money, then yeah, the numbers are going to get gigantic. Okay, so you have 19 million versus or 18 million versus 10 million at the age of 71. Then at age 72, that's when you have to take your first RMD, which is $710,000. That's a required distribution. Okay, now that $710,000, you are actually taking money out all the way through every single bracket from 0% all the way to 37% using the current tax brackets. Now, tax brackets may change. That is one of the risks, especially at those high dollar numbers. Okay, but we're taking out $710,000 the first year, and that RMD kind of creeps up year after year after year. Okay. At age 72, this is the last year the person works and then just takes the RMDs and no longer is contributing to any retirement accounts. Okay, so you've built up to like $19 million at this point versus $11 million. So now you're taking RMDs. The RMDs increase year after year, 710, 730, 750, 770, 790, 800, 820, 830, $842,000 at the age of 80. Okay, so these are still big RMDs, but again, the effective tax rate here is still less than 37% because the 37% bracket only kicked in at $625,000. Okay, remember, it was all saved at 37%. So we're still saving money. Now, we're going to keep going, and I brought this number all the way down. Okay, it went to all the way to age 90. And then at age 90, it ends up being $33 million versus $24 million. Okay. Because you have both your pension plan as well as your RMD that has invested and has grown up to $25 million in the taxable account and $8.4 million in the pre-tax. It's probably in an IRA at this point, but still listed here in the cash balance, pension, and 401k column. Okay, so here you are at 33 versus $24 million at age 90. Okay, and you continue this. I just fill out the entire graph with all the data points I could find. Okay, and then eventually these required minimum distributions start to get smaller and smaller because the balance is being drawn down. And at the age of 100, your RMD is down to $400,000. And your total value is $48 million versus $37 million. Okay. Now, that's if you get to 100. Now, you still have $2 million in there in your pre-tax account. You could take a lump sum of that and pay $700,000 in tax. Okay. And that would slightly decrease your value. It would go from $48.2 million to $47.5 million. If you wanted to pay all the capital gains tax, that'd be $5.8 million. And you'd still be left with $42 million. Okay. $40 million of that would now be in a taxable account and $2 million would be in a Roth IRA. In the after-tax option, you'll end up with $24 million. But if you pay all the capital gains tax, it'll be $19.4 million. So you have more than double the amount of money by doing the pre-tax option. Okay. So at very high incomes, there's no question investing in something that allows you a pre-tax deduction like this versus no benefit from a tax perspective at all in an after-tax account is a gigantic benefit. Okay. That savings of Medicare alone, that 2.35% actually amounts to a huge difference. And over time, that very small tax drag you have in a taxable account actually does create a substantial difference over many, many years. Now, the question of pre-tax versus Roth investing, that is a slightly different question. And that is because there is no Medicare tax with either option. So that Medicare benefit is gone. And that tax drag that you have in a taxable account is also gone. So it becomes much more equivalent. Okay. However, when you do pre-tax and invest the savings, you have a lot more dollars. Okay. So that's what I'm showing here in this next graph. If you invest $19,500 pre-tax at age 35, you're saving yourself $7,200 in tax. So you can invest that $7,200 and have a total of $26,700. If you just went into the Roth 401k route, you just have $19,500. Okay, so you have a difference in the amount of money in each side, $26,700 versus $19,500. Okay, now when you invest the tax savings in taxable, that taxable account's going to have a slightly lower rate of return. So this can actually slow down the growth of the pre-tax investing method in comparison to the Roth. Even though you have a lot more dollars, it may not grow as quickly. Okay, so when you don't have much money, you want to have as many dollars in your account as possible. But when you become wealthy and having dollars is not necessarily as valuable, it's a different trade-off. Okay, so if we just do this all the way to age 70, you end up with $3.4 million in total investments by doing the pre-tax plus taxable route versus $2.6 million in the Roth 401k. Okay, so you still end up with substantially more. But if you were going to take a lump sum Roth conversion at the end of age 70 and pay tax on everything, and also pay all the capital gains tax, you would end up at $2.43 million versus $2.58 million. So you would actually be down 6% by doing the pre-tax plus taxable if you go all the way to age 70. Now, if you did not take the long-term capital gains tax and just pass that forward, the difference here would be very, very, very small. It would be about $23,000. It's less than 1% difference. It's really a wash, and it really depends on how much tax drag you have on the taxable side versus the pre-tax or Roth. Okay, so at the end, it's a wash. But at the beginning, the entire time, you have more dollars in the pre-tax side, which if you were to stop earning money, you would have all those years to do Roth conversions later. So only in the situation where you don't actually take any Roth conversions, then it basically becomes a wash. But that's if everything works out all the way until you get there. Okay. And you could be slightly worse depending on what tax situation occurs. If you did a lump sum, or if you paid capital gains or not, and what the tax laws are. But it's really a small difference. But technically and theoretically, yes, you can come out ahead by doing the Roth 401k, but that's if everything works out the entire time. Okay. Now, I did another situation where we just do pre-tax 401k versus Roth 401k until age 70, and there's no other investments like a cash balance pension or anything like that. And when you get to age 71, instead of hold on. You know what? I apologize. That one is not done yet. So I will just cut that one off there because I'm out of time anyway. But if you have an option between pre-tax versus doing something like a non-Roth after-tax plan, that's a taxable account, pre-tax basically is always ahead if you're at the top tax bracket. If it's pre-tax versus Roth, it can become basically a wash or a slight edge to Roth if you don't ever take Roth conversions, because you basically work all the way up past the period of time where Roth conversions are going to be helpful, and you run into RMDs, okay, and you're already age 70 plus. Okay, but that's assuming you work all those years and keep contributing. If anything goes wrong any earlier than that, the benefit switches back to pre-tax very quickly. Okay. So for me, until I have honestly like $10 million of pre-tax, I don't even worry about pre-tax versus Roth, because $10 million pre-tax is still, if I'm taking out just $600,000 a year, I'm still only getting to the 35% bracket with the current system. So that's coming out at an effective tax rate much lower than the 37% that it would have gone in at. And I could take out $600,000 a year and deplete that and never have to worry about getting into the top tax bracket. All right. So that was a nuts and bolts lecture, because somebody has been wanting me to do this one for a long time. So Abby, there you go. And that's it for episode number 30. I have a number of questions from yesterday's post. I have them all there. I'm going to catch up and try to address more tomorrow. Thank you very much. You guys have a great night.